This is the Joe Mullins Show.
This is part 2 of the 2-part series with Congressman Randy Fine of Florida's 6th Congressional District here on the Joe Mullins Live Workshop Play Show.
You know, I'd like to take it up and open the floor for a few questions from listeners here. Let's go ahead and do that if we can, Congressman Fine.
Looks like Dave Sullivan's over there, County Commissioner.
As long as it's a hard question.
Easy question. Having still be in office, I'm going to make this apolitical as much as I can, and it makes sense. Right now, with Amendment 3 coming in from the state, the whole tax situation and all that, at the county and city level, we are concerned about what's going to happen. I've heard you speak before, and I agree with you. When it comes to utilities and things like that, you guys are going to have to pay for it at the local level. You can't expect the federal government or even the state government to pay for your interior stuff. And that's a whole different world. So given the fact that whether Amendment 3 passes or not, we're going to have less money available locally to handle our needs and services. And we want to maintain good needs and services because we want Palm Coast and Flagler County to continue to be a great place to live. So maybe talk a little bit about how in the future, and I think you got to bring in industry and you've got to bring in not just local real estate taxes for a whole bunch of reasons, but I think the answer is you have to be willing to expand, but expand smartly with industry and commercial. So maybe talk a little bit about how in the future, how are the cities and counties going to be able to manage things?
Well, that's a great question. That is a decision largely to the cities and counties at the state. The federal government doesn't oversee your zoning, and doesn't make the decision about what kinds of businesses that you're going to go in. You talked about Amendment 3, and my advice there was for local elected officials to be explaining to voters what the world looks like. Here's how much money we had 10 years ago. Here's how much money we had 5 years ago. Here's how much money we have today. Here's what our population was 10 years ago. Here's what our population was 5 years ago. Here's what our population is today. Here's what we spend it on. And here's how much we'll lose if this passes. And then here's where we'll have to make the cuts. And then the voters will decide what they want.
Problem is politics enter into all of that. And your starting point makes a difference. You start in the middle of COVID.
Well, I pulled 10 years. I pulled 10 years out of there. Make it 20 years. I don't care.
Okay,
but what
I'm just telling you.
10 years was but COVID was more than 10 years ago. So more than 5 years.
This is a political question right now, and it is going to hurt. It's going to hurt small and medium-sized counties more than bigger cities where the real estate taxes aren't as big a part of things. So I think what you have to do is adjust it to where you are more than just one size fits all.
My statement was, first off, and again, not trying to be a politician, I had nothing to do with Amendment 3.
Right.
At the state legislature. I could have, and I stayed in the legislature, but I had nothing to do with it. But I think the onus now falls to local elected officials to explain to their constituents. And I think some of them are going to struggle. I'm not saying you. I think some of them will struggle. I think some of them will say, yeah, our population went up by 10% in the last 10 years and our revenues have tripled. And then how do you say, but we're broke? So
Commissioner Sullivan, you bring up a good point, talking about industry coming in, not houses. We're putting all this house development. So we'll become the free place to live if this amendment passes, or a very inexpensive place to live. I think the focus needs to be on industry. It needs to be on jobs. Flagler County's seeing some major unemployment. That's contrary to what you say.
Kind of agreeing in general, but the devil's in the details.
Sure,
you got to work it out.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would not have done it in a special session. I would have done things a lot differently than the way it was done if I was still in the legislature. But it is what it is. It's on the ballot, and that's not going to change. I'm going to vote for it because I'm always going to vote to reduce taxes. But I believe that the local elected officials that it will affect, they need to go and tell that story to their voters. And the good news for you from your perspective is it's not a 50-50 decision. I mean, you got to get 60%.
Right. And I think I think whether we're going to get to 60 is a 50-50. So basically what I'm saying is that one way or another, we're going to have to provide services. In Palm Coast, by the way, we weren't as bad off as the county was as far as spending money. It was we were pretty much on track. we're fixing our utilities. We just took out a $330 million bond that we're going to have to pay for over the next 30 years to do that fix. And you're well aware of that. You've seen the whole utility system. That's big bucks.
Well, Commissioner Sullivan, when we were in office and we came out, we went to a private industry to fix Plantation Bay, private-public partnerships, and it worked out well.
Can work.
That's what I think we're going to have to start seeing more in government to be able to fix it.
But I don't want to. But the point is that we have to bring in good, clean, modern industry and commercial in order to provide enough tax base to run the system.
Absolutely. Councilman Son, I do have a question for you. If this property tax passes, is the city of Palm Coast going to have to raise their sales tax?
We don't get to raise the sales tax. That has to be done by the county. We can't raise the sales tax. There are other taxes.
And impose a sales tax.
Well, first of all, we're going to tighten our belt. We've already started that. I hate to say this, but we just let 7 people go from the city council because in order to get down to the for our coming budget, we need to reduce money. So first, you're going to tighten the belt. Then you're going to see where you are, and you're going to look at what you have to do and how you're going to pay for it. And there are a variety of ways of doing that: MSTUs, MSBUs, a whole bunch of things. Sales tax will be the responsibility of the county.
But the city could do a sales tax just within the city on Coast. Can't?
We cannot.
Do we have any other questions? Anybody wants to bring up anything, Tal? Yeah. Dave, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. I just want to make sure we answered.
Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a quick question in your thoughts. So we know fraud runs rampant across the board against all federal programs, right? USAID, across the board.
It's unbelievable.
And it runs at the local, the state, and the federal level. And my question around that is, with the advent of AI and the increasing capabilities of AI with deep fakes, both voice, video, things like that, how do you propose the federal government addresses that for both federal monies, state and local monies, to prevent even further fraud being generated by the AI capabilities?
Well, I actually want to step back on your question. And the biggest problem with fraud in federal programs is a lot of people don't want to eliminate the fraud. See, you and I probably all of us in here start from the premise that if there's fraud, we should get rid of it. And we assume that everyone believes that. The problem we have in the federal government is, for the radical left, fraud is a feature, not a bug. If you think the politicians in Minneapolis and Minnesota did not know exactly what was going on with the Leering centers, you're out of your mind. If you don't think the politicians in California didn't know what was happening with all of these hospices where there's like 50 of them in one building, you're out of your mind. If you think the politicians in New York don't know about the adult daycare centers where there's nobody going in and out, they know. And here's how it works.
Well,
left-wing politicians.
Said, and I agree.
They know.
It comes heavy from the left.
They know.
However, there are those.
No. There's fraud everywhere. But I'm saying the first problem we have is there's a lot of people who don't want to end the fraud.
Correct.
That is a big problem. So that's the first thing. But AI can be used, and I'm actually going to tell you an idea I came up with a week and a half ago, sort of related to your idea. I went on a congressional delegation to Venezuela. It's a little scary, but we just were sort of fighting with them. I was part of the first congressional delegation to go to Venezuela in like 10 years, since Maduro was removed. Brian Mast, who's also from Florida, who's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I sit on it. He asked me to go. He's kind of like my boss. He asked me to go. I went. But on the way back, we stopped in the Dominican Republic and we toured the embassy. And the Dominican Republic is like the second busiest embassy in the world in terms of people who want visas to come to America. Well, I didn't know that. Now you all know that. Second busiest. I think Mexico's number one, Dominican Republic's number two. And we learned the process of getting a visa. And it's basically someone shows up at a window. The person has like 3 minutes to decide, is this person someone we want to let into America or not? Now, how much can you look into someone in 3 minutes? That's a great example where AI could pretty quickly analyze that person. I don't think we don't want to take people out of the process, but AI could find the red flags or things like that. Because one of the things they do now is now one of the things they do now is they look at people's social media to say, like, do you say you hate America on social media? Well, the person's looking as fast as they can in the 3 minutes they have. The AI in probably 2 seconds could look at their entire. So there's a great example. It's not exactly what you're talking about, but I'm already working on that. Like, how do we use AI to help screen visas?
So my concern is just wrapped around the fraud and the
You're right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're
appreciate
welcome. Thank you.
Any more questions? So
Sure.
Yeah. if you'll introduce yourself and
Yes. Thank you. So, I'm actually, and this is the first time I'm actually announcing it. So I'm, Vinny, Vincent Moore. I'm from the Back Nine Golf. So
No, it's KCAB 9 golf.
sure. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I
So,
read your hat.
yes. There you go. So yeah, it's backwards, but yeah, I mean, AI is definitely a really great, what we were talking about. It would be, I wouldn't be able to have a job as a franchise owner for simulators. I mean,
Yep.
those are, it's really important to understand like different things. like
Incredible
that.
good.
Right. With limitations sometimes with education and, understanding like that sort of thing. So, that wasn't my question. So being raised in this county, in Flagler County, like the biggest thing that I've noticed after all of the years is we still have an issue, which of course we've circled past, and a 90-10 split in residential in comparison to commercial and that sort of development. If Randy Fine were to be in this type of position, right, be in a position of, local government at this point in time, what would you do in this kind of
good
case to get us not into the position of a few years ago? Actually, I had somebody say that we were going in the direction of Cape Coral. So let me ask you that question. How do we not go in that direction? Lessen that. Who would be a couple of good investors, speaking of Meta and Google, that would work best for our specific county?
Well, I think you have to decide. I say you, because we, the county, has to decide what it wants to be, right? Do you want to be a residential county? Do you want to be, I would recommend it. Do you want to be Broward and Dade and Palm Beach County? Or do you want to be like an industrial county? I mean, it starts with what do you want? What do you want to be? And people have to make that decision. I moved to where I moved in Florida because I didn't want to live in South Florida. And so my guess is the people who live here for a particular reason. They may not want to live in a county that's full of factories. That may not be. So you really have to step back and think about what kind of place do you want to be, and then you build things accordingly. What I will tell you this: I do not believe growth for growth's sake is an inherent good. I mean, one of the things we can't do, there's all these people like, stop building houses. I'm like, when did you move here? 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, okay. So you came here and now you think we slammed the gate shut on everyone else. But I also don't think that we should, my view is I don't think we should like go out of our way to grow.
Smart growth.
Smart
Yeah.
growth. But that is the challenge. The challenge we have in Florida, the best thing about Florida is everybody wants to move here. And the worst thing about Florida is everybody wants to move here. And I will tell you, it's going to get better and worse because very soon, no one's going to live in New York. No one with a brain anyway is going to live in New York. They're all going to leave. And where do you think they're going to go? They're going to get on that road that's out there, and they're going to drive south, and they're going to end up here. And so the future of, by the way, that's arguably a great thing for Florida. It's a terrible thing for America. We don't want the city of New York to collapse, and that's the path that it's on. But we're going to have more growth, and I think every community needs to decide what kind of community do they want to be. The most important thing is to make that decision. Because if you don't make the decision, it'll get made for you.
What do you see when you see this?
It's not my call to make. I mean, it's because
fully understood.
because
Yeah.
I'm a congressman, and
I think
it's not, and
what
so-
the congressman's saying and what we said in the commission a few years back when I served, we want smart growth. We want balance. We want homes, but yet we need jobs. We need
to support.
Industry here. We had a chance to have Amazon here, and the administration at the time was so disconnected with bringing them here. They said, oh, they'll never come. If you think that way out the box, it's not going to happen. So getting the and everybody said, let's just keep it a bedroom community. You got to have balance, is what the congressman said.
I would just say this. I represent 6 counties, and the decision that Volusia County is going to make, Volusia County sort of already made their decision, right? They want to be like a super tourism county. That's the decision they've made. I represent part of the villages. They've made the decision they want to be like Disneyland for people over 55. Yes. They've made that decision. Yeah, I represent Putnam County. They like their rural feel. So there's no right answer. Every county and every community. The important thing is that every community make a decision. Because if you don't, it'll get made for you.
Right.
Let me ask you about that, because I'm all about economic development and growth. I oversee all the sales at the radio stations. So I'm always interested about who's coming to town, whether it's a factory or whether it's a local store, whether it's a local grocery store, or whether it's a golf simulation store. What can the federal government, what can you do to help us get more business out of other countries? Not necessarily out of another, not necessarily out of another state.
So President Trump's done that. His tariff policy, people always ask me about tariffs. Tariffs are just sales taxes on foreign goods. It's just a fancy word. So if you buy a golf club that's made in America, you don't pay a tariff. If you buy a golf club that's made in China, you do pay a tariff. It's just sales jobs. So a big part of President Trump's tariff strategy is to create the incentive to make these things in America. That's something the federal government can do. Create the incentives for people to do these things in America. The other thing we could do is make sure, one of the big issues that local businesses often have is they say, I want to build my business, but I can't hire anybody who knows anything, is to make sure that our education system develops people who have the capability to provide the skills that these people need. So there's lots the federal government can do. And the other thing is we can not tax people so much that they don't want to do it. You know, I was a businessman for 22 years. That's what I'm good at. That's why I know something about this stuff. But I'll never forget how angry I was when I worked so hard to build my businesses, and I was paying 50% in taxes. I worked January, February, March, April, May, and June. And I gave all that money to the federal government. And then I got to keep what I made in July, August, September, October, November, December, half the year. And then Barack Obama stands up one day and says, if you build a business, you didn't build that.
I remember that.
Yeah, we don't need government to do that. What I always am cognizant of is the federal government only has the money because the people give it to us. So we need to be helping those who are willing to take the risk to build businesses in order to do that.
Would you make it possible for the federal government for unemployment benefits to be shorter rather than as long as they keep going? Because they keep renewing people.
Well, that's a fixed program. I think it's a Florida program. But yeah, what we've seen is the longer unemployment benefits exist, the longer people tend to stay unemployed. I would like the federal government to spend a whole lot less money taking money from one person and giving it to another, and a whole lot more money on the public goods that we all benefit from, whether that's roads, parks, beaches, wastewater treatment. That is the function of government. The government was when our founders developed this country 250 years ago, it wasn't about how much money can I take from him and give to him. And we need to try to get away from that as much as we can.
All right, Joe. Congressman Fine, I want to thank you for joining us today and taking time out of a busy schedule. You've been all over this country, working all over the world, doing an amazing job for the residents of the counties you represent, CD6, also the state and the country. We really appreciate the time. We also appreciate Tortuga's Kitchen in Flagler Beach for hosting us and allow us to do it. Congressman Fine, how can the listeners, and when I say listeners, I mean, we've got them all over the country, all over the world now. Probably the rural ones, you're going to have to step back. I don't know that he's going to be able to help you too much, but the people in our district and our state and our country, how can they get in touch with you guys?
So there's two ways. The easiest way is if you go to my official website, it's fine.house.gov. That's how you can see the services we provide. And that says how you reach my office. And then the other way is if they want to follow what I'm doing, at Rep Fine. That's where we are on all the social media platforms, right. At Rep Fine. Right. You can't really contact me that way, but if you want to call my office, you want help, you want to talk to me, fine.house.gov. We'll have all of the phone numbers for all 6 of the district offices that I have.
And I've heard so many of our listeners talk about how responsive your office is, how they get back in touch, how they work hard, they keep them informed. It's just great to have a representative like you for our district. And I'm sure there are 66 counties Well, no, we've got
I
6 here,
represent
so
6.
61 counties that would love to have a representative like you.
We've got some.
We're blessed here to have you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to do it.
And remember, guys, Florida, the greatest state to live, work, shop, play, keeping strong elected officials making right decisions is why we are the #1 place in the country to live, work, shop, and play. Thank you and have a great weekend. And remember, make sure you get out and let your voice be heard. Let's keep strong people like Congressman Fine in office, making this our place to live, work, shop, and play. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Recorded by the Flagler Voice Podcast Studio.